So, with the end of the expansion, I kind of want to make a list about, in my opinion, what's the best classes to play in PvP. I don't PvE, so this isn't applied to PvE. In the least bit, it's just really for arenas and battlegrounds. It's actually kind of more for arenas now, because we kind of know what's OP together, but kicking it off shouldn't be any fucking surprise. No one's complained about this class for the entire expansion. Destruction Warlock. Completely balanced. Great job, Blizzard. So essentially, Destruction Warlock is overpowered because of one thing. You gain a shit ton of haste for no reason, and your Chaos Bolts kind of just hit like a truck at all times. That's with no cooldowns, by the way. But that damage is going to be reduced in PvP, but we'll pop cooldowns here just to show what I'm talking about. Get some haste procs, and see the burst. Keep in mind the damage is going to be reduced in PvP, but still, how much can you reduce 200Ks? And of course, this is just further amplified, I suppose, with lots and lots more gear. Keep in mind, this character is not geared in the least bit compared to most Destruction Warlocks out there. I've seen Warlocks have anywhere between 40 to 60% haste baseline, which pretty much just makes your Chaos Bolts not instant cast Greater Pyros, but arguably more deadly than Greater Pyros. So that's one of the main reasons why I guess Destruction Warlocks are really, really strong right now. Outside of their just amazing damage with Chaos Bolt, they do have constant dot damage, so for some dot cleaves, say you're going against like a 3v3 team, you can always just cast Immolate on everyone. And that dot damage on Immolate, it does actually do quite a bit. 3,000 every 1.8 seconds. And then that does generate Embers too, which just means more Soul Shards as well. So you can play like a Shadow and still be pretty decent. When it goes to defensives, of course we have Unending Resolve, which is just pretty much not a shield, but 40% damage reduction. Casting immunity. We have a stun, Shadow Fury. Of course, most people will be able to dodge this. We have Havoc and Mortal Coil, so usually when you're a Destruction Warlock and there's, say, 2 people on you, or when you need heals, you'll throw Havoc on one target the other target, and then throw Mortal Coil. And of course, you'll gain a good bit of health. I think it's 40% of your max health, whatever that is, reduced in PvP, depending on dampening. What else do Destruction Warlocks have? We have a Portal if we really want it. We have increased armor. This was nerfed halfway through the expansion. Not even. It was like 2 patch. Not 2 patch. It was not nerfed that recently ago. It used to be 150% armor, 10% max health. Now it's 90% armor and 5% max health. I still think this is pretty strong. It gives you about the armor as a enhancement shaman or a hunter. 34% damage reduction. Pretty good. Still more tanky than, I guess, a leatherware and 5% health. You also have a root through Conflag Rate, which is pretty strong. Your pet also acts as a spell lock and purge, so you have Shaman Purge for some reason, and Interrupt. You also have Reflex for Greater Pyros, Chaos Bolts as well, Fell Fissure for healing reduction, because we totally needed that as a Destruction Warlock, and movement speed reduction, so again, that's good against rogues. And Curse of Weakness, I guess, if you really want to go defensive. It does reduce the damage of people by quite a bit, with a very low cooldown. So Destruction Warlock, in conclusion, our burst is just fucking nuts, to be honest. I'd say that's the main reason we're broken. If you know how to, I guess, be defensive and have little moments of offensiveness as a Destruction Warlock, you're literally just going to be like... I'd say it's pretty easy to get 2k rated, as long as you know how to press your Fear button, which, by the way, is spammable, Blizzard. Press Fear, press Chaos Bolt when you can, and you're pretty close to getting high rated as a Destruction Warlock. One thing I didn't mention, and I'd say is the majority of the complaints for Destruction Warlock, is our mastery. We'll read it right now. You take 6.3 reduced damage plus a random amount. And that acts as somewhat healing as well with Soul Leech. Soul Leech is really broken. Pretty much just grants you a shield passively. So you just have passive defensiveness that you don't really think about, which is why I didn't mention it either, but... yeah, play Destruction Warlock, guys. It's like the one class that can actually, potentially, I guess not actually one-shot, but two-shot people, just 2 spells. 2 Chaos Bolts, you're probably dead. So, Destruction Warlock, guys, number 1. So number 2 on the list, it's kind of just spellcasters for the first 2. Kind of a surprise, but not really. I guess it's just the fact that the 2 spellcasters right now, Destro and Fire, are pretty broken. We all know why Fire is broken. Mage is always just broken in, for the most part, every expansion. I can't think of an expansion where Mage just wasn't a competitive class in Arena/Battlegrounds. So, let's start with the non-obvious, because we know what the obvious is. It's Greater Pyro. They're nerfing it in Shadowlands, so get your worth out of it now. I think it's a 15-second cooldown on it, but still don't change the actual ability. Currently, you can spam 35% of the target's total health and fire damage for as long as you want, as long as you aren't interrupted. This is game-breaking, I'd say. There's no other description for it. It's pretty game-breaking in Arena, because you just have to focus either the Fire Mage or the comp to go here with Fire Mage 2 is Destruction Warlock and Fire Mage and like Holy Pally, by the way. If you play that comp, you'll just not lose. Just play in the center of the arena, spam Greater Pyro, spam Chaos Bolt, spam your crowd controls, you'll win. It's like 1+1 math pretty much, except for gaining rating. But anyway, Mage. What can we do? We have an interrupt, we have 3 spell schools. We have 3 interrupts from different spell schools. We have Ring of Frost, which can just completely incapacitate someone in a ice cube. We have Dragon's Breath, which just pretty much it's not incapacitating, but it just like it disorients them, I believe, for like 4 seconds. After you cast Dragon's Breath, you can always line it up with a Ring of Frost or Polymorph. That's kind of our defensiveness. Of course, we have Shimmer, which useful for mobility, and Spellsteal, which with certain talents, you can use Kleptomania. This is really good against Druids. You Spellsteal essentially. Druids have an ability that applies all their healing over time effects in one global. If the Druid runs that, you run Kleptomania, so as soon as he uses that one ability, you can just Spellsteal all of them instantly. It's pretty much... it screws them over really hard. Let's get to the burst outside of Greater Pyro, since I can't even use Greater Pyro on a target dummy, but just know, with someone with about 500,000 health, it's going to hit for 140,000, 150,000, somewhere around there every time, unless they have defensives up. So, when you're not casting Greater Pyro and Polymorph, you're pretty much essentially just trying to CC people with Ring of Frost or Dragon's Breath, and then you burst like this. I use the burst strong, by the way, it shows how good I am. But the burst, even without Greater Pyro, is pretty decent. Would have been better. It's really good if you have certain essences too. Certain essences can pretty much reduce the cooldown of combustion. I'm looking for it. I'm pretty sure it's Vision of Perfection. This essence is really good with fire. It reduces the cooldown of combustion a lot. And there is a certain playstyle with combustion that you can run with Kindling. And I think it's Firestarter, yeah. Firestarter and Kindling, you can pretty much run a build that reduces the cooldown of combustion by a lot, to the point where it seems like there's no cooldown on it. But yeah, that's Mage. Lots of crowd control. Really high burst, constant pressure with Greater Pyro. 3 spell schools, so whenever you're locked out of one, you can just use another. Great mobility. You have a shield, you have roots. You have heals now with essences too. Temporal shield as well. There's so many reasons. But number 2 on the list, it's Fire Mage. If you haven't played Fire Mage this expansion, I'd suggest you get you need to press Greater Pyro spammable before they nerf it in Shadowlands, because that's going to go away. And this will be remembered as like one of the most meme specs that's ever, I'd say, existed. Just 35% health every 3 seconds. I'm surprised it's not out of the game already, to be honest. Number 3 on the list, guys. Number 3 is Assassination Rogue. You can play Assassination or Sub. I think Assassination is definitely a lot more friendly to newer Rogue players, and Sub is higher skill cap and can outplay enemies slightly more than Assassination. But Assassination, I'd say, is what I'd suggest to most of you, unless you're literally peekaboo. So let's talk about it. Assassination Rogue, what do? We have high damage over time spells with Garrote and Rupture. Essentially, this will be applied to as many targets as possible, or as many targets as you want / feel comfortable with as an Assassination Rogue. And keep in mind, the amount of dots you do maintain increases the amount of energy that you do regenerate. Talking about PvE trinkets and how that kind of interacts with Assassination Rogue, and the next 3 classes are all melee classes, by the way, and I'd really like to emphasize that the trinkets of Spine... I don't know the trinket name. It's the Tire from Mechagon, and the Spine trinket from the new raid that I still haven't done. So, get those 2 trinkets, 2k rated easy, essentially. I don't want to go into that too much, but essentially those trinkets hit for 60k plus every 1.5 minutes. Yeah, 1.5 minutes just about. So, get those 2 trinkets, you'll be 2k rated in no time with Assassination Rogue. Talking about those trinkets and how it kind of interacts with your damage increase with Vendetta. Vendetta increases the damage your abilities and auto attacks deal to the target by 30%. Also generates energy, also lets you see people in stealth. If you apply Vendetta to a target and use those trinkets, I've gotten hit upwards of 120,000, which is more or less a fifth of anyone's health in the current expansion. The trinkets are really broken, and Assassination just kind of amplifies the damage effects to the point where you consider just maining Assassination Rogue. And that's what a lot of people have gone to these days, where they're just maining Assassination Rogue, because they know it's a pretty cheese spec, it's really easy to play, and you can get high rated fairly easily. So let's talk about, I guess, what rogues have always done. Crowd control, and just controlling the enemy team. We have Kidney, 6-second stun. We have Cheap Shot, which I believe is a 4-second stun. We have Garrote, which is a blanket silence and a very strong bleed effect if used from stealth. We have Sap. We have Blind. Marked for Death Kidneys. Kind of all those controls for enemies, whether it be in arenas or battlegrounds. Talking about our more defensive spells, we have Faint, sorry. One spec'd into Elusiveness. Faint pretty much is a 30% damage reduction on a 15-second cooldown. Pretty strong, surprised it hasn't been nerfed, but it's been like this for 2 or 3 expansions now, so I don't think it's going to get nerfed anytime soon. So Faint's a big one. If you're not a rogue using Faint, I'd highly suggest so. Outside of Faint, of course, we have Cloak of Shadows, really good against, I'd say, the caster meta. Not meta, but Chaos. I always say Chaos Warlock. It's Destruction Warlock. Really good against Destruction Warlock and Fire Mage. Of course, we have Vanish as well, which I hope we all know what Vanish does. It gets you out of situations, puts you into stealth 2-minute cooldown. We also have Crimson Vial, 30% of your max health over 6 seconds. It's strong, I guess, unless you're taking dampening. If you are high into dampening, it doesn't heal for that much, but it is strong for, I'd say, battlegrounds. And we also have Evasion, which is really good against anyone except an Arms Warrior, I'm pretty sure. And Evasion, again, just causes you to dodge everything. This is really good for Fury Warriors when they try to enrage regen, and also Death Knights when they try to Death Strike their health back. You can dodge those heals, and they can't get any heals, because they'll just miss you every time. Let's talk about the burst, I guess. So I don't have any PV trinkets, but my burst is still pretty good. Let's check the DPS. What's my item level on this guy? 445. There's 475 is usually the higher item level in the game. Let's kind of do burst. This is my attempt at burst, guys. It's not too bad. Of course, I didn't have good essences or didn't have my essences charged up. But, again, the burst isn't too bad. And this is always just amplified with better gear and good trinkets. I really can't put an emphasis on how important those 2 trinkets are when it comes to rogue gameplay. Because it really helps with your opener, and it helps a lot of the gameplay too, I guess, just rogue and arena, is getting really hard openers to get your enemies to panic and use a lot of cooldowns early, so then you can control that further with your crowd control, and then plan out a certain kill from there. But yeah, rogue. It's kind of like it's always been really, really strong crowd control, decent damage, and I guess in the current state of it, you're pretty tanky if you really want to be, and you have a lot of movement speed with Faint, Shadow Step, all that stuff, so play rogue. It's the #1 melee right now, I'd say. So number 4 on the list is Frost Death Knight. This is contested with Windwalker Monk, to be honest, but I just chose Frost DK because I think it's more fun, and it's, instead of physical damage, it's frost damage, so it's like kind of more damage in certain situations against high armor people. But let's talk about Frost Death Knight. What does Frost Death Knight do? We apply damage over time effects, which does a good amount of damage, about 1,000 damage every second. Again, kind of makes it so you can play with dot classes. Let's talk about the important thing. We all know why we're here. We all know why Frost DK is broken. Let's press this one ability called Chill Streak and see how much damage it does without cooldowns. Let's reset my recount. 120, 150, 200, 250. Okay, 250,000 damage from a 45-second cooldown spell. This is really strong. This is why Frost Death Knight is in this spot. Chill Streak mixed with their just constant damage. It's something to be reckoned with. On top of, I guess, their constant damage, they have really good cleave. And they have really strong cooldowns, I'd say. And by really strong cooldowns, I don't mean that... I guess... Okay, I do mean the actual cooldown is strong. But what I mean by strong cooldowns is the cooldown of the actual cooldown itself is so low. I just used Pillar of Frost, and one spec'd into certain traits such as Ice Cap. Ice Cap reduces the cooldown to Pillar of Frost, I think every time you crit, or something weird like that. So Pillar of Frost is already up again, so we'll use it again. This is essentially the rotation as a Frost DK. Trying to maintain your Icy Towns. Gonna wait for Pillar of Frost to go up. Pillar of Frost is up, so we use it. We use Chill Streak, and just look at the Chill Streak damage. The Chill Streak damage alone should be enough to convince you to play this class. And if it's not enough to convince you to play the class, then honestly I wouldn't. Because outside of Chill Streak, I think before we even got Chill Streak, I was like, man, this spec kind of feels a little slow. But with Chill Streak, it's really good. To my knowledge, it's still in the game in Shadowlands, so you don't have to worry about the ability going away. The chance of Blizzard actually removing an ability that seems overpowered in an active PvP season, if this season has showed me anything, it's that it's probably not going to get removed in one season. So, Chill Streak's going to be here for a while, I'm assuming. So, Chill Streak. That's all I gotta say. Here it's hitting for 30,000. It really hits however hard it wants to, but it does so much damage. Yeah. Chill Streak. That's about it. On top of Chill Streak, we have Transfusion, which is good for defensiveness. Death Strike heals, which I think we've all known about for quite some time. We have Anti-Magic Zone, which is really good for the caster, somewhat meta right now with Destruction Warlocks and Fire Mages. Lichborn damage reduction. I haven't used this, but I've heard it's good in certain situations. And AMS, which with certain traits is like a 10-second absorb, which just lasts forever, and it's horrible to deal with as a caster. So if you can get that trait, AMS is really, really strong. So yeah, good heals with Death Strike, Death Pact. Decent mobility with Death's Advance. However, our mobility is kind of the weaker spot. Chill Streak damage, 75% of the reason you're going to play this spec is for Chill Streak damage. Yeah, it's a good... With Windwalker Monk or Demon Hunter, if you get the enemies packed together tightly and use Chill Streak, you can completely 100-0 someone in a global. Not a global, but I guess a stun, I suppose. So, alright. I don't really even want to go into too much detail about Demon Hunter. I've talked many times about Demon Hunter and how I think it's really strong. Their mobility is, I'd say, the strongest out of every class. They naturally just have movement speed increase. They also have a double jump, which is really broken, and I believe it increases your movement speed even more than the flat, 15% you already have. God, where do we start? Lots of damage. Lots of haste with I-Beam. You pretty much are in demon form 75% of the time with Demonic, which I've heard is even getting stronger in Shadowlands. So Demonic and I-Beam, let's talk about this, I suppose. I-Beam essentially turns you into your demon form. Your demon form empowers your abilities to do more damage. Your Chaos Strike and your Death Sweep. I don't know what it's called outside of demon form, to be honest, but you get a lot of haste when you go into demon form. Let's go into demon form again. You'll notice that my demon form through I-Beam essentially has no cooldown, and I'm just going to try to showcase here the availability to demon form that can be possible if you do collect souls properly. This is only emphasized with the cooldown reduction corruption, which didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did. Really strong right now. And I guess Demon Hunter, it's somewhat cooldown based, so if you can get cooldown reduction corruptions, it's really, really strong. We do have decent damage reduction through Blur and Darkness, but even our damage outside of Demon Form is really strong. So let's just go over that. Demon Form, increased haste, increased leech, increased damage. Not too hard to think about. It's just a huge buff to your character. Your I-Beam puts you in Demon Form, and your I-Beam gets reduced by Shattered Soul Fragments. So you're in Demon Form more when you use I-Beam, which means more damage, more leech, more haste, which means more survivability. Outside of that, which I'd say is 50% of the Demon Hunter rotation, you have two buttons to press: Chaos Strike, Blade Dance. That's essentially it. That's your damage. You have Fell Eruption, which is just a stun. It's like your one stun outside of Chaos Nova. It's your single target stun, I should say. So your single target stun is Fell Eruption. Your AoE stun is Chaos Nova. You do have a Purge for some reason as a Demon Hunter. It also grants you Fury. It removes one beneficial magic effect. Purge gives you Fury. With a certain trait, I believe it does spawn a Soul Shard Fragment, so that is something to keep in mind. On top of that, we can see Rogue through Stealth. We have Fell Prison, which essentially is, I think it's an Incapacitate, so it's really easily broken through damage. And I believe you have to spec into it for it not to be broken in PvP. Let's talk about Blur. Blur increases your dodge chance and reduces the damage you take flat by 35% for 10 seconds on a 1-minute cooldown. A fairly low cooldown for 35% damage reduction and 50% increased dodge chance. I could see a nerf in this sometime in the future if Demon Hunters kind of dominate Shadowlands, but for now, the 1 minute cooldown high value defensive is here to stay. We also have Darkness. It's essentially a pally bubble. If you're really unlucky, you won't absorb any damage, but as long as you take cover of Darkness, with Darkness, you will absorb most of the damage as long as you stay in that defensive. One of the things about Demon Hunter I think is really interesting, and I hope they spread to other classes, is the flexibility of honor taunts. And it seems like with Demon Hunter, you can change your honor taunts almost with every comp you go against. So let's talk about it. Reverse magic. This is really good against Shadow Priests or Affliction Warlocks. I do believe this is going to be incredibly broken once Affliction locks roll around in Shadowlands and everyone starts going Affliction instead of Destruction. Essentially, if you have full dots on yourself, you can use this ability and it reflects them and cleanses you. Don't think about it too hard, just press the button when there's a lot of dots on you. Eye of Leothris, really good against casters as well. 5% damage of 5% of their total health every time they cast an ability. If a caster doesn't realize this is on them, it will literally just kill them. I've put it on casters in Battlegrounds, they don't realize it's on them, and they literally kill themselves without me doing any damage to them. Mana Rift, this has been nerfed multiple times because it is so broken, but it is still used. It's essentially a mana burn, but somewhat more likely to miss. Deals 8% of the target's maximum health, and also 8% of the target's mana. Detainments that incapacitate, imprison, thing I was talking about. Mana Break increases, it's a damage spell based on how much mana they're missing, which it's not as great as it used to be. It used to be really good, but it is still something I guess you could use if you really, really want to. Glimpse is really good for melees. Whenever you use Vengeful Retreat, which is that backflip ability, you'll gain Blur for 3 seconds, and Blur is really strong. Cover of Darkness is the immunity spell I was talking about. Demonic Origins, reduce cooldown to Metamorphosis, this is just for staying in demon form longer, and Rain from Above, which essentially just puts you in the sky, and makes it so you can't really be targeted by melee. So yeah, Demon Hunter, it's one of my favorites. I think it's one of the better design classes, in my opinion. Maybe it's just the double jump getting to me, but yeah. That's the top 5 classes for BFA. If you haven't played any of these classes, I'd suggest you do so before Shadowlands rolls around, and hopefully these classes are good in Shadowlands as well. Thank you guys for watching. Check out the Twitch if you haven't already, it's in the upper left. I'm shooting for 100 hours streamed this month. We'll see what happens. Like the video if you liked it, leave a comment if you have any questions, subscribe to the channel, all of that jazz. As always, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.